Okay, welcome everybody to Intellectual Chaurasta YouTube channel. Today we have an eminent guest here. He's an expert in the field. Let me introduce Professor Girish Jha. He is a chairman for CSTT. It's a Commission for Science and Technical Terminology, Ministry of Education, Government of India. And he's actually a professor of computational linguistics at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, JNU, and also a concurrent faculty at School of Engineering, Center of Linguistics, and Special Center for E-Learning at JNU Delhi. Sir, today let's discuss about science and technology in ancient Sanskrit texts, Vedas, and our ancient India. Yeah, you can share your PowerPoint and yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pradeep. Let me quickly share my screen. So let me share my screen completely. Okay. And okay, so you can see my PPT, right? Everybody can see my PPT. Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you, Pradeep, for inviting me to this very important podcast. Let me, at the beginning, explain that I'm not an expert in all the sciences and technology that we have in Sanskrit, right? I have a special area, which is linguistic sciences, which I teach, but I can briefly talk about other areas also, And so what we call science in Vedas and Sanskrit is not strictly as we define in the Western terminology, For example, the 6 Vedangas that we had, 4 of them were linguistic sciences, other 2 were Jyotisha and Kalpa. So there was no strict compartmentalized distinction between what is science, as we understand today, what is not science, right? Now, the latest trend in the scientific research is that you have to do bootstrap and combine, do multidisciplinary studies with the natural sciences with other sciences. So the boundaries are diminishing. That was actually the situation in ancient India. So when we talk about Vedas, we still are in the Vedic age, and India is mostly the Vedic culture, Vedic literature, and the Vedantic philosophy. When I say Vedantic philosophy, that doesn't mean end of Veda. That means the mature trend, mature, I would say period in the Veda literature, Vedic literature, and which actually governs the Indian philosophy. And even, those philosophies are Jain and Buddhist philosophies are all evolved from the mainstream Vedic philosophies, So we can say that Vedic philosophy and Vedantic culture is what India actually is governed by. And when we say Vedic literature, the date of Vedas become very important, and by one of the newer methods of using astronomical software, the date of Mahabharata has been set to almost 3800 BCE. And if we have Mahabharata as 3800 BCE, then Vedas would be at least 1,000 years, before Mahabharata. So you can imagine about 5000 BCE as the date of earliest Vedic literature. And so Vedic literature and the Aranyakas, and then the Upanishads, and in the pre-classical, the epic Sanskrit and the classical Sanskrit and the modern Sanskrit, we have had a history of almost 7,000 years for this language called Sanskrit. And the reason we have so much of science and technology in ancient Sanskrit texts, if someone has to tell me what is the single reason why, every society has science and technology, right? But not everybody is able to document it nicely. In India, we have been able to document it nicely and document it for ages. And in oral tradition, in poetry, and that has persisted despite vehement attacks, invasions, and whatnot India went through. But we still have been able to maintain all of that. So Sanskrit is the real cause why we have so much of science and technology still documented in India, and millions of manuscripts still waiting to be digitized in India. So Sanskrit language, if you talk about it, is the most ancient language and also the most modern language. Most ancient because Vedas are composed in Sanskrit, And most modern why we have AI connections, straight connections with AI and Sanskrit. I'll talk about that towards the end of my talk. So, and if you talk about Sanskrit, then we have Vedic Sanskrit and then Laukic Sanskrit. Panini, the grammar, talks about two kinds of Sanskrit: Vaidiki, in which the texts are composed, and Laukiki, in which people speak. Every language has two variety even today. I'm currently in the Vaidiki dialect of English language. I'm very formal dialect of English language. To my family, I speak Bihari variety of Hindi, which is Laukiki Hindi. So Panini says, I have my bhasha. Panini does not mention Sanskrit, he mentions bhasha. He says, my bhasha has two varieties, Laukiki and Vaidiki. And I'm writing two sets of grammar rules for each one of them. This is most modern idea. In linguistics, we talk about the two basic, varieties of languages that we talk about. And if you talk about a little further, how sciences in Vedas and Sanskrit, evolved, and how we have been able to document it and make sure that these literatures are received by the posterity in India. So I'll basically talk about linguistic sciences, mathematics and astronomy. I've clubbed them together. Metallurgy, chemistry, engineering. I'll include architecture also in engineering. Medicine, and also towards the end, philosophical disciplines and their application in sciences. Now, philosophy in India is not non-science, right? It's a hardcore science, the philosophy. And someone has remarked that in the most of these Sanskrit texts, and 95% of Sanskrit texts are actually scientific texts. That includes philosophy. And it's surprising that Sanskrit is linked to religion and esoteric practices. It is very scientific tradition, scientific text. And what we call Sanatan is a scientific religion, very scientific religion and path, I would say. So if you go one by one, the language, before I talk about the linguistic texts and linguistic sciences in India, let me talk about the current situation in India, and I'll connect that. So we have supposedly 4 language families, which I oppose. I'm theoretically opposed to the language family division in India, and one of my books, Perspectives on the Origin of Indian Civilization, which is a product of a seminar in UMass Dartmouth, opposes that, bringing in all kinds of arguments from linguistics, archaeology, history, etc., etc. So as of now, we have Indo-Aryan languages and Dravidian languages, Austroasiatic, Tibeto-Burman, and Andamanese and Jet. So we have 15 Indo-Aryan languages in our constitution, 4 Dravidian languages, 1 Austroasiatic Santhali, and 2 Tibeto-Burman, Manipuri, and Bodo, right? If you combine 15 and 4, so we have 97% of people speaking these 19 languages in India. That doesn't mean other languages are not important. Every language is very, very important. And we should not lose a language like Andamanese because we don't know how much we have lost when a language dies. Currently, script is also important. We have 12 major scripts and 22 languages in our constitution. Devanagari is the biggest script, and Sanskrit was written in not only Devanagari but all major scripts of India. Today we have manuscripts, like in my own family, I have manuscripts in Mithalakshara, which I don't read, right? So Mithalakshara, Bangla, Odia, Grantha, all kinds of script you have, Sanskrit, even Sharda in the north. So Devanagari, Bangla, and then you have Meitei script, Gujarati, Kannada, Malayalam, Odia, Gurmukhi, Tamil, Telugu. Perso-Arabic is one script which is not Indian in the sense that it is not phonetic script. It has come from outside. So Perso-Arabic and Roman are alphabetic script. They are not based on sounds. So it's a cognitive load on Indians when they learn these scripts. Other Indian scripts are Brahmi based. They are sound and letter, a combination, one-to-one, almost one-to-one mapping, which is easier for an Indian mind to quickly learn those scripts. So Sanskrit studies, Sanskrit linguist studies in India, if you go, so we start with 6 Vedangas. There are 6 Vedangas, which are considered the limbs of Vedas. You have to know 6 Vedangas to really know and appreciate Vedas. Without them, you cannot understand Vedas. So if you see, 4 of them are actually linguistic sciences. So that was the importance of linguistic sciences in India. Chanda, metrics, Vyakarana, grammar, Shiksha, phonetics, because you have to utter, you have to do ucharana of the Vedic mantras. So therefore, phonetics is very, very important. They were not written, they were actually heard, right? Recited and heard. Etymology, because if the Vedic words have become obsolete and you need a mechanism to make sure those words have the meaning what they have in the Vedas. So to prove the meanings, to set the meanings of the terms which have become obsolete because of the passage of time, you know. And then there are two other Vedangas called Kalpa, which is rituals, and Jyotisha, as you know, the Khagol, another thing, astronomy. Now, the text for the study of language, almost every text, Vedic literature has a lot of statements on language, language and linguistics. So Vedas, there are, Vak Sukta, famous Vak Sukta on what is language, why language is important. Vedangas, we have 4 Vedangas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, Brahmanas, Nighantu Nirukta. The first text of etymology in 9th century BCE by Yaska. And the Nighantu is a glossary and Nirukta is etymological process. You first, make a list of those words which have supposedly become obsolete, then apply the methods of grammar to find the meanings, to set the meanings, right? Grammarians, the trained grammarians who preceded Panini, trying to compile the Sanskrit language, which was changing at a very fast rate. And then there were grammarians after Panini also. And then the texts of Shiksha Pradeshaka tradition, there are so many of them, at least 100 texts supposedly are there. And our students have edited at least nine of them actually. One of them, Atre Shiksha, we got the English translation of that, We obtained that manuscript from Hamburg library, in Germany. It wasn't found in India in good shape. And the post-Paninian grammarians, for example, Katyayana, Patanjali, Bhartrihari, Bhojaraj. Some of them may have been mathematicians also. Bhojaraj, Ramchandra, Nagesh Bhatt, Bhattoji Dikshita, all of them, the huge tradition of linguistic studies, right from the Vedic times all the way up to 18th, 19th century. Why is Sanskrit important? Because of the Panini as being the a central figure who gave the formal studies on the language, which was adopted by the West, and we have our artificial intelligence today. Sanskrit had its very important linguistic tradition, and Panini is a core formal grammar tradition, which was appreciated and adapted by the Western linguistic sciences and tradition, and India's own linguistic tradition. So much so that there was a famous article by Rick Briggs. I'm opening that article. Hope you will be able to see. I always knowledge representation in Sanskrit and artificial intelligence. The article came in 1985 in AI magazine, which talks about that in India people have been doing an exercise of what happened. Okay, are you still there? Hello?
I'm there.
Yeah.
I can see the PowerPoint. Do you
Okay,
want
good.
to?
No, that's fine. So idea is that in India people have been doing interpretation of text, error-free interpretation of text, unambiguous interpretation of a linguistic string. Have been doing that, Shabdabodh and other Prakriya. I'll talk about that later. So why not the AI community benefit from that first? Because in AI, the core problem is that machine must understand natural language string unambiguously. And natural language string is mostly ambiguous. To make sure machine is able to represent it unambiguously, we have to see how Indians have been doing it for a fast language called Sanskrit and fast changing scenarios in India. So that is very important. Secondly, another paper by Nicholas Osler, who says Sanskrit studies have been foundation for computational linguistics and AI. So that article also one needs to understand and see. And now mathematics and astronomy. I'll come back to linguistic sciences at the end a little bit. In this, basically the history would be from the Vedic times all the way up to 18th, 19th century. And as I say, we are still in the Vedic period. So there are many people still working on these areas. We recently did a seminar. The Commission of the Scientific and Technical Terminology did a seminar in JNU on the Vedic mathematics. So there are people working still on Vedic mathematics. So the system was, we had the sutras, and the sutras, and then there'll be vrittis, vyakhyas, and bhashyas, and then the Mahabhashyas. So texts were composed in sutraic style because it was easy to remember and sing. For example, the entire Panini's grammar is of 4,000 sutras. It can be sung in 2 hours, roughly 2 hours. So you memorize the text, And then there'll be a prose, vrittis, vyakhyas, and bhashyas, which you have to understand, to know the main text, the sutra text. And the earliest manuscript is said the Bakshali manuscript found in Peshawar. It is approximately of 7th century AD, because we started writing around 5th century BCE. People started writing the manuscripts. Before that, we did not write, because it was oral tradition mostly. It was still an oral tradition in India, but people started writing, composing texts in script around 5th century, 6th century BCE. Another important milestone for maths was the 15th century Kerala school of mathematics, which is known for trigonometric functions. And it was Madhavan who actually started that school. An important text would be Shulba Sutras, 8th century BCE, basically how to construct fire altars when we do yajna. So we have to construct the yajna shala and yajna vedi, and they have to be constructed as per the book, and also in those people say the earliest expression of the Pythagoras theorem, as per a scholar Hayashi says that this is the earliest expression of Pythagoras theorem. Then Bodhayana Shulba Sutras also very, very important. And Panini and Katyayana also, they were grammarians, but they had been mathematicians. They may have been mathematicians, because Panini's definition of zero morpheme, people say is the first expression of what zero actually is. Katyayana is also said to be a grammarian as well as mathematician. Pingala, though, was a linguist, Chanda Shastri. His Chanda Shastra is very, very famous, but he also may have been certainly a mathematician. So the major works we can have are Bhattiyam and Brahmagupta's Brahma Sput Siddhanta, Varamahir's Pancha Siddhantika, Bhaskaracharya's Siddhanta Shiromani, and then Madhav of the Kerala school. There was a whole tradition of the Kerala school. And the discoveries of, like decimal, binary numbers, concept of zero, negatives, arithmetic, algebra, trigonometry, definition of sine, cosine, etc. A lot of things. I mean, what I'm mentioning here is only the tip of the iceberg. If you go deeper into it, every text, not necessarily the core mathematical text, but every other discipline may have some mathematical, interpretations of things there. Every science, engineering, etc., will have a lot of mathematics there. So one has to go deeper into it. Now, coming to the metallurgy, you have basically many texts, and I would mention some very important texts. In one of them, I have personally worked. So, Rasa Ratna Samuchay is by Bhagwag Bhatt. It does the synthesis of the writings and opinions of several other authors, and presents a coherent account of medieval Indian alchemy. So there were many, I would say, compilations which compiled the work of previous scholars, and then also tried to do vritti and vyakhya, and later some translations also happened. I'll give you some example of that. And they also describe complex metallurgical processes and describe how to set up and equip a laboratory. So it's very important how to find the raw material from where. Not every raw material will be pure. So you have to, there are instructions that this raw material will be from this part of India, and this raw material from this part of India. Then you bring them together, then construct a laboratory, and then start purifying them. After purifying, you construct, you develop chemicals by going through a process. All of that. The problem is, in all of that, the rasas which are mentioned, sometimes the rasas of from flowers, etc., and the names are quite idiosyncratic and very difficult to correlate those names with the current things. So that's sometimes the problem. Rasayan Shastra, or so there is a Rasayan Sar, a text, a very important text. We found that text from the Banaras area, obviously from the 20th century, but it was English it was basically translated into Hindi by, I think, some Vaishya, Umidilal Vaishya, or also the Acharya himself. And one chapter there is Dhatu Maran Shodhana Prakaran, the biggest chapter there in that Rasayan Sar. And I had a consultancy, I had a visiting professorship at UMass Dartmouth in the form of a JNU consultancy. So we got that chapter translated, and some PhD students did PhD on that, basically Bhasma aspect at the UMass Dartmouth. I'll talk about that. And there are many other texts, like Ayurveda texts like Charak Samhita and other texts, and there'll be Nighantus, which we'll talk about. For example, Amar Kosha has a lot of classes of aushadhis, Vanoshadhi Varga. So Vanoshadhi Varga will have all the aushadhis, how those aushadhis can be, names of aushadhis and properties, and then the Vaidya will know how to use those aushadhis and make a rasa out of it, and then make some kind of bhasma from there. Now, I'll also like to put on record some of the famous quotes of Will Durant's famous book, The Story of Civilization, several volumes. And in one of those volumes, he talks about, that the expertise of the Indian, skilled workers, so to say, or scientists, as the most skilled of the nations in chemical industries, as dyeing, tanning, soap making, glass, and cement. By the 6th century, the Gupta period, the Hindus were far ahead of Europe in industrial chemistry. They were masters of calcinations, distillation, sublimation, steaming, fixation, the production of light without heat, the mixing of anesthetic and soporific powders, and the preparation of metallic salts, compounds, and alloys, etc. And the tempering of steel was brought in ancient India to a perfection unknown in Europe till our own times. The Muslims took much of this Hindu chemical science and industry to the Near East and Europe. The secret of manufacturing Damascus blades, for example, was taken by the Arabs from Persians and by Persians from India. So a lot of knowledge has flowed from India to Iran to Arabs and to the West. And Arabs have been very honest. For example, number system, they call it Hindusat, and the Western people call it Arabic numerals. And it is our numeral, because in Europe it was the Roman form of numerals, was very inefficient. So the number system actually is from India, and unfortunately it's called Arabic numerals, is actually Indian numerals. Now, I would like to add the experiments that we did at the Center for Indic Studies, University of Massachusetts. I was a visiting professor there as the Mukesh and Preeti Chattar, distinguished professor of history of science. And I used to go there in summer. And this portion translated, the Dhatu Maran Shodhan Prakaran, led to some experiments by PhD students on the process of making bhasma, because bhasma, if made properly, could be used as nanoparticles. Basically in medicine, production of medicines. It can be it can be used potentially as in the production of medicines. And so we collected some samples, Rajata Bhasma, and from here, and then we did some experiments. And we found that it's very difficult. It was very difficult to even the commercial Ayurveda entities in India may not be following entirely the Ayurvedic process as mentioned in Rasayan Sar or Rasayan Shastra textbooks. Now, coming to the Ayurvigyan, of course, very, very popular. And there were some estimates that still most of India depends on Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurvedic, treatments and medicines than the Western medicines. Western medicines are, may not be really available, doctors in the remotest part of the country. And Ayurveda, the home medicine, is easily available to everybody. And they first thing is to go to Ayurvedic, treatment. And then if, not solved, then you go to the hospital, etc., etc. So generally, there are 8 kinds of departments mentioned, in all the texts like Charak, etc. Kaya Chikitsa is general medicine, and then the Kaumara Bhritya is pediatrics, and Shalya Tantra is surgery, Shalakya Tantra is ENT, Bhuti Vidya is psychiatry, Agada Tantra is toxicology, Rasayan Tantra is chemical sciences or biochemistry, you can say, and Vajikaran Tantra is science of sex and related treatments, all of that. So, and there'll be text, on each of these, areas. And so we have Charak Samhita, Shushruta Samhita. Some of these texts, Charak and Shushruta, are available in search mode on our server, sanskrit.jnu.ac.in. You can search these texts. And then we have Agnivesh Samhita, Kashyap Samhita, Harit Samhita. All of these texts could be, or you can find easily the PDFs of some of these texts online. And also there are some sites which allows you to search. For example, my site allows you to search Charak and Shushruta. Now, coming to the architecture part, and well, you see the constructions of buildings, temples, and other important historical, entities right from the Vedic times. I would say we have, a lot of evidences, archaeological evidences available. A lot of obviously Indus Valley would be the one where we have a lot more available material. Findings from there. And then coming to Maurya's, you have a continuation of the Indus and some innovations there. The Mauryan bull, like for example, and you compare Mauryan bull with the Indus bull, you'll find a lot of similarity. Gupta's period was perhaps the highlight of the architectural marvels in India. And then the North Indian style of temple architecture versus the Dravid style of the southern Indian architecture. And sculpture, the important points are the if you go to the Mauryan period and a little later, the Mathura versus Gandhar, sculpture and the statues of Buddha are very distinct in their facial expressions. And the entire temples and buildings were rock cut, simply carved out of the mountains and rocks. And there were brick architecture also, as you find in Nalanda. There were bricks, used to make those libraries and universities, etc., etc. So a lot of diversity actually, from Mauryas who used a lot of wood actually, and then to Guptas, a lot of rock cut and brick architecture, and all over India. And not only that, when we talk about India, the Southeast Asia also, so a lot of bigger temples were constructed in Southeast Asian countries. Still, we have remnants of those in Indonesia and Cambodia and many other places. Now, coming to the engineering, which includes, of course, Vastu and architecture, a lot of texts, Vastu Shastra is a very important area of study in ancient India. And we have Vastu, of course, is becoming very, very popular because people want to construct their houses based on the Vastu guidelines. And you will see architects learning Vastu Shastra, and they are actually good in demand. The main engineering text, I would say, Brihat Samhita, Maya Mata, Gargya Samhita, Griha Pichika, Vastu Chakra, Shilpa Prakash, etc. Many, many texts would be there. And I would like to point here regarding aeronautics, Vaimanika Shastra, on the Yantra Sarvasva Maharshi Bharadwaja. So there's a video on YouTube. If you search ancient Vimana on YouTube, you'll come across a video, about half an hour video by the History Channel of America. There they are discussing how the planes flew in ancient India, how they just levitated and then flew in India, and how the planes were constructed, how they were flown, what kind of foods were given to the pilot, and all kinds of things are being discussed and discussed in a scientific manner. So I would request everybody to go to those videos and see how people are finding interest in the ancient Indian science and technology, while in India we are told these are not the real sciences, and we are fed with what is called the Western curricula. Though new education policy is turning things around with Indian knowledge system, but we still, most of our curricula is what would not be used by us in our society, immediate society. Now, the philosophical theories, philosophy has been, several kinds of philosophy. So they typically, I'm only taking that part of the knowledge. What is knowledge, and how we can apply those theories with artificial intelligence. I'll take that aspect only. So there's always a lot of discussion between what is knowledge and what is not knowledge, prama and aprama, true knowledge and untrue knowledge. In AI, we always discuss what has to be represented, what has not to be represented. Representable knowledge and non-representable knowledge. We have to sift from bad knowledge and good knowledge. So all that is important to know. What is good knowledge? Good knowledge not only to provide answers, but good knowledge to provide solutions to our problems in India. Most AI trained large language models are providing the answers to our queries, but not solutions to a problem. So if we distinguish between good and bad knowledge, So we can check a lot of misuse of AI. You know? And in this context, there are Buddhists talking about things differently, Vedantists talking about differently, Nayayikas talking about things very differently. And if you take those things a little bit more formally, you can create a model where these things can fit into creating good AI system. For example, Nyaya, I'm taking Nyaya. So Nyaya talks about four means of knowledge: Pratyaksha, and Anuman is like a multimodal system, which is interpreting your facial gestures. Multimodal system, Pratyaksha. Whatever you are saying or whatever you are gesturing, that is the knowledge, Pratyaksha. Anuman, if something is not there, you infer. Then Upaman by analogy, and then Shabd is the major means of training AI systems is Shabda today. If you have a lot of language corpora, we are able to train good AI systems in the form of large language model. We typically need about 2 billion words to train a basic LLM in any language. And there, we need a lot of language data. And how do we use that? So there are ways. Talks, the Nyaya system talks about how to take these, formal philosophical methods and put them to use by AI. Now, if we talk about the science which goes in composition of the text, how the texts were composed and how the texts were interpreted in India, that's also very important, because texts are the basis for Indian knowledge system. And so the texts were composed essentially in the sutra style, and then there would be vritti sutra, which is melodic style set to chanda, so that people are able to remember it. And then they also make sure the accuracy of the text by doing different part tradition. The jata part, ghana part. So that when I read the text, you read the text, we all arrive at the same actual textual entity. Therefore, India has been able to maintain the accuracy of text even after so much of problems in India. And then the texts have to be remembered, and then to understand, you have to do vritti. For vritti, we have to have the relevant glossaries also, and we need to do, obviously, we may have to do etymology, vyakhya, and then bhashya, and then from bhashya we have mahabhashya, and then a whole shastra is built. So one text can lead to a whole shastric discipline. But if you construct good text, you must know the art of tantra yukti. So you have to compose text by removing tantra doshas, remove the errors, and then obtain correct unambiguous meaning of a text. If you have composed the text error free, you will be able to obtain the meaning error free. And in doing that, you will have to connect sentences for clarification of meaning, and you'll have to worry about Vakya Yojana, how to do Vakya Yojana, plan sentences, and how to plan meaning in a sentence. And Shabdabodh was the process where people were able to obtain the unambiguous meaning, by putting together things like Akanksha, Yogyata, Asati, Tatpari. When you construct sentences, make sure right Akanksha is there, right Yogyata is there, and Asati is there, nearness is there, Tatpari, all of that. And this was used both in constructing text as well as interpreting text. And then after you have constructed text and you have been able to obtain error-free meaning of the text, then you enter in argumentation. If maybe there is someone who has a different interpretation of the text, then you have an argumentation with the opponent, or Purva Pakshin or Uttar Pakshin, and that is called Shastrartha. And so Purva Paksha, you have to know the argument of the opponent. So the opponent has to present, this is my interpretation. And all of this is done to make sure the text is accurately interpreted, and then becomes a vada and a parampara. So you have to find the flaw in the opponent's argument, and then propose your argument. It's supposedly flawless. And then establish your theory, truth and vada. And if you want to defeat the opponent, you have to point false in his argument, his or her argument. And if you have done a nigraha, you have found the points of defeat. Nigraha, you are doing a grahi. You are basically catching the errors in the opponent's argument. So through all of this process, by error-free construction of the text error-free obtaining the meaning of the text, then doing argument with the opponent to establish that this is the right meaning. And that becomes the Vad and Parampara. This was the method in India. So therefore, the texts have retained their original meaning and form, and therefore we have been able to continue. This has never been done in any other civilization of the world. Only India has been able to do this extremely useful and extremely scientific method of text. Now, coming back to Panini, linguistic sciences, I said I'll come back to it again. So there are three important scholars who contributed to AI from Indian linguistics. Panini, 7th century BC. Saussure, who was a Swiss linguist, he studied Sanskrit and taught Sanskrit. And Chomsky is a modern linguist who obviously was inspired by Panini and Saussure. So why is Panini important in computational linguistics, NLP and AI? Because Panini's grammar is the first model of perhaps the functioning human brain. If I'm able to speak English right now and you are able to understand English, because there is a common grammar somewhere in our brains which are co-located on certain principles, and based on certain principles, and we are able to understand each other. But does English stay in our brain, or there is some language neutral formula in our brain, language neutral format in our brain? And that Panini has indicated that our brains have some grammar, some metagrammar, grammar or grammar template, which the human child, when he grows in a particular community, society, he or she picks up that language. That Chomsky has indicated as language acquisition device, LAD, which becomes universal grammar when the child grows up. So Panini has given the first model of that possible device that Chomsky is indicating. He says the device has 4 modules. The phonetic component, where there are sounds, sounds arranged in sound classes. Then there are rules of grammar. Panini has given 4,000 grammar rules. Then there are databases, which are databases of verbs, verb roots, 2,000 verb root databases, and then nominals databases, and then smaller lists. And he says, when I'm speaking to you, your speech component is activated. So you are listening to what I'm saying, and you are writing that out. And then the grammars are acting on those written out speech, supposedly speech sentences. And the grammars take help of the lexica, the dhatus or verb roots, and the nominal stems, and then take help of the other lists, and then I will completely parse. Once the parsing is done, then you're able to understand what is being said. And then you generate response in that language or other language, following a similar method. The same grammar template which is in the brain is able to parse the communication, is also able to generate the communication. We don't have 2 sets of grammar rules. We have one grammar which is doing both the things. And that has been the basis of the cognitive science research, basis of the artificial intelligence research, and all those, I would call futuristic research that is going to come. So Panini's system is more formal, largely unambiguous, similar to a program, computer program, and in the sense that it creates variables and instantiate variables, assigns values, and that does expansion of the variables, creates variables on the fly, assigns values, uses them, and disbands them. And then there are phrase structure rules like sutras of Panini, which are very similar to what the PS rules and replacement procedures were ruled in compiler design. Some famous quotes from Panini. So Leonard Bloomfield, who wrote the famous book of linguistics, in 1929, which is also published by Motilal Banarsidass. The paperback edition is available. You should read that book. In the introduction, he says the descriptive grammar of Sanskrit, which Panini brought to its perfection, is one of the greatest monuments of human intelligence and an indispensable model for the description of languages. So, greatest monument of human intelligence, and also a model which you cannot ignore when you're describing any language. Any language are 2 kinds. Human languages like Hindi, Punjabi, Gujarati, Sanskrit, or the machine languages like Java, C, etc., etc. You're describing any language, you will need Panini. That's what Bloomfield he says. He says indispensable model for the description of languages. Encyclopedia says Ashtadhyayi distinguishes between the usage in the spoken language, Laukiki, and the usage that is proper to the language of sacred text, Vaidiki. As I said, every language has 2 varieties, 2 registers, so to say. One which we use every day, and other we use to write books. Ashtadhyayi is generative as well as descriptive. And we need generative systems for AI. With this complex use of meta rules, transformations, and recursions, the grammar in Ashtadhyayi has been likened compared to the Turing machine, which is an idealized mathematical model that reduces the logical structure of any computing device to its essentials. That is the quote from Encyclopedia Britannica. Monier Williams says, for example, the great linguist Panini gave the concept for meta-language. Meta-language concept was given by Panini first and constructed 1,000 of years before computer scientists began exploring the same idea. But no one has been able to match him to this day. The sophistication of Panini is still unmatched. And I have been a software engineer in America before I joined JNU. I know what is the sophistication of programs is, and Panini's program is perhaps the most sophisticated I have ever found. Why is Panini important in computing? Explicit formal mechanism to describe almost anything. See, you can describe mathematical formula, this and that, but you cannot describe human language. Can you describe human language mathematically? First done by Panini only. So this idea was alien to the West, that the human language can be described mathematically, right? If you compare Panini with Chomsky's grammar model, you find stark similarities. So Chomsky's two books, Syntactic Structures, it came in 1957, and Aspects of Theory of Syntax came in 1965. The grammar model that emerges from these two books of Noam Chomsky, it has a base component, which has phrase structure rules similar to Panini's sutras, and lexicon similar to Panini's Dhatupada and Ganpat, which give you the deep structure analysis of the sentence. And then you apply the deep structure, semantic component, which is Karak Prakarana Panini, Karaka Panini, which is language neutral. We always talk about Karaka as the most mature, aspect of Panini's grammar. And then if you are able to understand, then you apply transformation rules to generate a response. You have to also speak in society. You have to not only understand, but also generate a response. When you speak, your mouth has to produce sounds. That's the phonological component, which is Akshar Samamnaya Panini. So this model of Chomsky is very, very close to Panini. And Noam Chomsky does mention Panini as a generative grammarian in his book. If you compare the context-free grammar, Chomsky gave a grammar hierarchy, type 0, type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 2 grammar is context-free grammar, which was used for compiler design. If you compare that with Panini, you'll find much more similarity. So formally, a context-free grammar is a collection of non-terminal items, terminal items, production, and start symbol. And in non-terminals in Chomsky's grammar would be noun phrase, verb phrase, determiner, noun, and verb. In Panini, it will be much more abstraction. Like even sounds, the sound classes will be included besides the part of speech categories. So Panini's grammar is much more abstracted, even at the level of speech. Terminal items, the typical words in the language, but also the sounds and verb roots in Panini. The words as well as the inflected forms as well as the sounds and verb roots in Panini. So much more, abstracted and much more cross-linguistic applicable. Productions in Chomsky are A goes to alpha, but Panini, A goes to alpha if beta, A goes to B if C. Always, all the rules are Aka Savarni Dirgha, Aka becomes a Dirgha if Savarna follows. Iko Ik becomes Yan if Ach follows. Always, And the start symbol, see at the start symbol. In Chomsky, start symbol is utterance, what comes out of mouth. What goes before is not the object of study for Chomsky. But in Sanskrit tradition, what goes before is very, very important. We call it S bar. So the akanksha, my desire, vivaksha, my desire to speak or construct a sentence is also very important. So in Sanskrit, we go beyond, the desire, the mental processes which go on the planning of the sentence is also very important in Sanskrit. If you compare Panini with the Backus form notation, which is rendering of the CFG, you'll find a very close similarity. So a sentence in Backus will be NP and VP, noun phrase and verb phrase in typical Western languages. In Sanskrit would be pada. Pada is either sub ending or ting ending, subanta tinganta. And NP would be determiner and noun in Western languages. In Sanskrit would be sangya pada, going to sangya, flanked by abstract entities. Verb phrase would be verb and NP. in Western languages, and Sanskrit would be Kriya Pada, going to Kriya, flanked by abstract entities. So much more cross-linguistically applicable. So Panini is a better model even today than Chomsky. Noun is basically all the words in Western languages, but here it will be all the inflected words, also. So one word may have many forms in every language. And verb would be all the inflected verbs in Western language, but here would be verbs as well as the verb roots. And determiners would be absent in the Eastern languages. So from Panini to Saussure was kind of a middle figure who Saussure and Bloomfield kind of ventilated Panini to the West. Panini to Saussure to Chomsky, Chomsky to computational linguistics, and to artificial intelligence. Because the computational linguistics came before artificial intelligence. The machine translation projects were started before AI term was coined actually. So I would say the computational linguistics is a father discipline to AI. So idea obviously came from Panini, and there is someone who actually had written a letter to ACM. I'll show you that letter. So describing natural language or programming language, language is natural or artificial, exactly using the right rules. If you are able to describe an expression unambiguously using the right rules, that is what AI machine want basically. So Panini to Saussure to Bloomfield to Jellick-Harris to Noam Chomsky to John Backus, to Backus Normal to Peter Knorr, and Backus Knorr from BNF. So it was actually called PBF, Panini Backus form, and also Panini Knorr form, but eventually it became BNF. So someone called Peter Zilahi Ingerman wrote a letter to ACM in 1967, and he did a research that why Panini should be given the credit. He says, I suggest Panini Backus form, and he gave his argument. He says it was Panini who did all the foundational inventions on this. Therefore, he should get the credit. And in fact, it was called Panini Backus form for quite some time. So Panini's technique and abstract notation used in accurately describing natural language structure is very similar to John Backus, who was IBM designer in the 50s, who described a new programming language called IAL, International Algebraic Language, which actually was called ALGOL. So first programming language, you can see how it was inspired by Panini also. So I'll end my talk here, and I'll hope that there are some questions in chats, and I'll take those questions. Thank you so much.
Professor Jha, thanks for a brief overview of the entire science and engineering and multiple disciplines in Sanskrit text, and as well as Vedas, which is part of the Sanskrit text. So let me ask you a couple of questions actually. The first famous, actually, it's a lot of WhatsApp shares and forwards. Is this like NASA has a special division, and for Sanskrit, so they want to use Sanskrit. I think like they presume, or maybe they believe that Sanskrit will be the best language for AI. Does NASA have the department? But when you see the fact check videos, there's nothing like that except the 1975 article.
Yeah, 1985 article by Briggs is the only document that we have, and we keep on hearing about this and that. But actually, some people do research, in a clandestine manner. They don't make it public. I know, I have been consultants to Microsoft, and I've been consultants to Google. Not everybody publishes what they want to bring out tomorrow as a better and better thing. So it may be possible that people are working on Panini's grammar and Sanskrit in a clandestine manner, and adding to it Nyaya and other Shabdabodh techniques. But what we have presented to us is the article in 1985 AI Journal by Rick Briggs. That's the only thing. But Sanskrit is certainly very accurate in describing natural language sentences artificially, unambiguously. And there are techniques practiced by ancient Indian grammarians, Naiyayikas. Even today, if you go to Sanskrit University, there are 18 Sanskrit universities and 3 central universities. And there are the Nyaya departments, and there are profound, knowledgeable people who are actually practicing it. The idea is that we should form a team of these experts with the AI community and adding linguistics to it, and then do a long-standing, long-term research. Actually, nothing will come out of doing a short-term research here. We'll have to do a continuous funding in this area. Certainly, yes.
Okay. So the next question, which I have is like, if you check the Rigvedic mantras, and the popular translations that you find is like Griffith or H.H. Wilson from University of Oxford. And a lot of people do blame that it's they absolutely is like some people say like it's just like nonsense. It's like completely wrong translations. It's just like literal translation, but they don't have the gist of like what author is trying to say.
Yeah. See,
So is that true? And as a follow up in the same thing, why do Sanskrit Rigvedic hymns or any Vedic hymn gives the scope like you can interpret the way you want? Why didn't the authors know like this will be a problem? And why don't I just tell things in a crystal clear manner in unambiguous fashion? So there is no scope for interpretation in the first place.
thank you. Thank you. Very good questions. The first question, the Indo-Europeans, I mean, I call them Indo-Europeans because after Sanskrit was so to say discovered, there was a flurry of activity in Europe, setting up Sanskrit departments, and a lot of bright people studied Sanskrit. The whole of 19th century was actually a race for studying Sanskrit by eminent scholars, and Wilson and Griffith, a lot of them were there. They had the limitation, they had difficulty in accessing the primary texts and studying them clearly. And their method was that they will get hold of the text first and then get some grammar fragments and then start a list of words and then they study. And it will limited environment. And then whenever they come up with interpretation, they'll be always questionable, always questionable. So I would not trust any Western translation of Sanskrit text, any Western translation, for the fact that there are many untranslatables in Sanskrit, and the fact that you cannot translate a text without experiencing the culture. If people stayed here and then a lot of, therefore, the lexicographers from the West have been more successful. The Monier-Williams dictionary is very, 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 very famous. But their translations of ancient texts, of course, very, very questionable. And in fact, there is a historian, A.L. Basham, who says that he is a historian. He says that my translations of Sanskrit texts are not to be trusted. He himself says that. Right now, second question, I would say that you should trust any Indian language translation more than an English or European language translation of Indic Sanskrit text. Now, coming to the second question, why Sanskrit texts are so hard to interpret, the Sutraic style. See, we were in oral tradition, and we were, thanks to those, rishis who thought about it, oral tradition. Because had we not been in oral tradition, had we written our text, they all would have been burnt by the invaders. When they burned the Nalanda library, they thought the tradition will be lost, but they did not realize the text was in the brains of people. They again put it out. So there was an advantage of putting the text in the brain. So how to put text in the brain? You have to sing it. You have to put in a short, very sutraic style text. Now, if you have a sutra like Panini Sutra or 4,000 sutras, you read it, you remember it, but it's very difficult to understand them as such. You need vrittis and vyakhyas. Now, vritti is done by experts on Panini. For example, I'm a Panini grammar expert. If I do vritti, it will make more sense. It will be more accurate. If someone non-expert comes to that discipline, for example, there are astronomy, mathematics, engineering discipline. If I know Sanskrit language, I cannot hope to do a good interpretation of engineering text. Just like English language. If I know English language, I cannot understand physics or mathematics well. They are technical disciplines. So we need interpreters from that discipline. If I have to interpret a Jyotisha text, I need a Jyotisha Pandit who will be able to do vritti, prose vritti of that poetic sutra. Prose vritti is for understanding, not for remembering. You remember the poetry sutra, you memorize it and pass it on to the next generation. Vrittis, vyakhyas, bhashyas are there to debate, discuss, understand. And that creates the whole scholarship in that particular text. And every text has a whole school of scholarship in India. This amazing kind of scholarship has gone into every discipline in India. And that's why a sutraic style text has scope for multiple interpretations. And if people come from various disciplines, they will have their own interpretation.
And so I have a like, how do you rate Sainacharya's commentary on Vedas? How accurate is it? Sainacharya, he's from Vijayanagara Empire, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Shaina's interpretation is still considered the most authentic. And but then the people have done various kinds of interpretation of Vedas. Like in Arya Samaj, they have done their own interpretation. Many people do. But what I mean by interpretation should be the core text must be interpreted first. For example, the commentary, vritti, vyakhya commentary from the core tradition. Then you have scope of some Vad can interpret Vedas from their perspective, some other Vad can interpret from their perspective. It's all possible. But there must be a core school scholarship. And Shaina, I think, is the core scholarship there, and very trusted and authentic. I can't suddenly. Hello, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Just one.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people say like, except a few hundred words, Saina didn't do a good job, but the rest of the things he did a pretty decent job. Some complain, especially when it comes to like this animal sacrifice. They just, I don't know, is it sugar coating or like they just are hiding something under the carpet? Or Sainachara is right on. Like he said, like there is animal sacrifice.
See, the Vedic Karma Kanda is also based on sacrifices, and still many cultures, Mithila, for example, my culture, Bengal culture, animal sacrifice is still there. Upanayam sanskar, all the sanskaras, the goat sacrifices are there. So that was considered the core of the Vedic culture. Now there might be many interpretations. So you can interpret an animal as simply wealth, not really a particular animal. So that gives you. And then after Buddhism came, the animal wealth was considered very important. So there was a embargo or sort of stop on the sacrifices, and people evolved. Hinduism has also evolved from what was needed then, what is needed now. So things also change. It's not that and Vedic texts are, they do not say that you should not change. You should evolve and adapt to the new requirements. That's always there.
That's right. That's right. So my next question is like, you can how do you date actually Vedas? Some say dating Vedas is an impossible task. A lot of German scholars have said that. I don't remember the names, but I do read it in certain books. They say like it's hard to put Vedas in a chronological timeline. And in Rig Veda, you can find Saraswati River and geographical descriptions. So you can say like, okay, these guys lived in this area, and so maybe you can predict some time from that point. And the other part is like you said, like Shurva Sutras is like 8th century BCE. How do you get to that date? Because Pythagoras theorem, I checked one of the website, History of Mathematics. They say Egyptians, Babylonians knew about the Pythagoras theorem way before, like thousands of years before, like 1,000 years at least before Shilpa Sutras. And how do you reach to like 8 BC?
Well, see, the source of all the knowledge, these texts, the Sutras and other texts of mathematics, astronomy, which have come later, are actually in the Vedas. So when we say Vedic tradition, we take certain idea and then we develop on it, right? And Vedas are the most ancient, Rig Veda is the most ancient document of the entire Indo-European culture, right? Now, what is the date of the Vedas? Whether Vedas originated in India, or which is now more potent argument now, because there's a language called Bangani, which is a dialect of Garhwali, has been found to have the Kentum properties, which, as per the Indo-European, should not be in India. So the movement out of India is becoming more potent now. And if you do that, things fall in place. Avesta around 6th century, 7th century BC, for example, Rig Veda, even if you go by the NCRT date, 15th century BC. So everything falls in place. If you do the other way around, it will be problematic. Now, Indus Valley was certainly post-Vedic. And from Indus Valley to Maurya, you can find very clear continuation of the material culture. And from the non-script, Rig Vedic people don't know script. They don't talk about script. To script in Indus Valley, very clear. Language evolves from no script to script, right? And a lot of these cultures, if you go deeply into it, they'll be very clear that the Indus Valley came after. It was basically a post-Vedic culture, and from where we have the current India, the construction of houses, villages, etc. So a lot of studies have been done. We did a seminar in UMass Dartmouth on the perspectives on the origin of Indian civilization. A lot of research papers came. One research paper was remarkable. It talked about dating of the Mahabharata using astronomical software, which is planetarium software. So what they do, they look at the reference of a planet's position in Mahabharata. For example, when Krishna goes as a Shanti Doot to stop the war, and he is not able to stop the war, So he comes out of the meeting dejected, and Karna tells him that, see, war has to happen. It's a dharma yuddha, so we should start the war on this day when this nakshatra goes in this position. So they have taken that, and they have pointed where is this nakshatra now, and how much time they take to displace that position. And based on that, they have found that that reference is 3800 BCE. And if Mahabharata war is 3800 BCE, then Rig Veda should be at least 1000 years before that. So we can safely say that 4800 BCE or 5000 BCE would be the Rig Vedic text. And Sanskrit language would be still earlier, because Rig Veda is poetry, mature literature. So to construct something in a literary form, language must have originated much earlier. So we should say Sanskrit language at least 6000, 7000 BCE, right? That would be the
But
date.
yeah, but how do you because if you take the astronomical textual evidence, like a textual mention of astronomical data, Rama's birth actually and Ramayana, some people claim like it's 12 and 12,000 somewhere BC. Ramayana is in 5,000. So, and the Vedas are definitely like in Ramayana has so many mentions of Vedic. So, so it should be like after the Vedas only.
It's
So
possible. It's possible that Vedic age has to be still pushed earlier, than the 6,000 to 7,000 BCE. It's quite possible, but we have to wait for the more data to emerge. Now, the
yeah,
Bangani data is very, very significant. It came in 1995. It was discovery of Bangani language. One of my colleagues, Klaus Peter Zoller, did an accidental discovery of finding Kentum properties in Bangani. So it's quite possible that people moved out from here, and all the theories are Proto-Indo-European. It's basically a story and nothing like that. And in that book, we are basically criticizing the Proto-Indo-European theory as a fiction, nothing more than that. But
and
yes, the Indo-Europeans now did whatever they wanted to do, but the Sanskritists in India, I again say that the 18 universities, the 3 Sanskrit central universities and linguistic departments, they should get together and work more closely, and also historians work more closely on the whole idea, and put things in a concrete shape.
okay. So do you think the IBC, you mentioned like IBC is like post-Vedic. Um, so the question becomes like, why Sanskrit scholars are Sanskrit rishis didn't prepare their own text? The language, the everything is there, so elegant, and Panini grammar rules also so good. But why did they depend on like Brahmi script?
Brahmi
Why did
script. No, wait. The Sanskrit texts were
Panini?
composed orally.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And why did until Panini nobody wrote it down, right? In,
Even Panini was oral tradition. We started writing manuscripts much later. Much later, I would say 5th
so
century BC or something like that.
Panini's
Maybe
Astadhyayi is in which script, Professor? Right?
Ashtadhyayi was only oral, in oral. So Ashtadhyayi was found
Oh,
by
okay,
the
okay.
commentators. Katyayana's text, had some references. He commented on Panini's rules, and then Patanjali also cross-commented. So from these books, we have been able to, obtain Panini's grammar.
There is a controversy actually. People try to belittle Sanskrit, like, oh, Sanskrit didn't even have its own script. How can it be so old? You guys are like fooling us, something like that. See, like Babylonians have the cuneiforms. You can have all this like archaeological evidence, but where is archaeological evidence for Sanskrit? The oldest archaeological evidence is that Mittani horse manual training, 1400 BC. That too is not in Sanskrit, but they have some Sanskrit god names mentioned
Okay.
in that. Yeah,
Right. The script is a very imperfect medium, actually. Sounds are the more perfect medium. We cannot 100% accurately describe a sound in a script. There'll be always some corruptions. So the Vedic rishis thought speech is the most perfect medium, and they compose everything in speech. Therefore, they evolved the speech sciences phenomenally, in a very detailed manner. The 100, even today, 100 Padashakya texts, Siksha texts available, So, but much later, they thought that it would be maybe difficult to maintain speech form, because my son may not be so interested in continuing the tradition. So they, out of fear, they started writing. And there they had this Brahmi script, must have been there in India, but people did not write. The Brahmi script, we have earliest specimen from Ashoka, and Brahmi gave rise to all the modern scripts of India, North and South Brahmi, from the same family. Excepting the Perso-Arabic and the Roman, all other scripts are from the Brahmi family. That indicates towards the single family, of languages and scripts in India, much against the so-called divisive theories put forth by some of the linguists. The language family, this and that, all of that. India was much more, a cohesive, unified, because of the Sanskrit and Brahmi. I would say.
Okay. And my final question actually is like, so how do you plan to train AI models? Like, I think Sanskrit, you can hire some Sanskrit pundits who are very good at pronunciation, and you have algorithmic Panini's uh, grammar. So, do you think it will become an AI model, the perfect AI model?
Yes. If we train a large language model with Sanskrit text, we'll hope to find an AI which provides solutions, not merely answers. And I've given a rough estimate how many words tokens will be needed to Sri Rajiv Malhotra ji, Infinity Foundation. And we've estimated about 2 billion words. If you collect 2 billion words, entire Sanskrit tradition will need a lot of synthesized words also to make that number 2 billion words. Why original Sanskrit words? Because the original Sanskrit texts are devoid of corruption, of the Western media, language, etc. That comes, we get motivated by reading news and seeing the news channels. So unmotivated Indian tradition will be from the Sanskrit. If you train an LLM with that, we can hope to get a truly Indian AI, and from that AI we can spawn the different languages AI by bootstrapping the Pandit Jam and other things. So that's the whole idea. It will be a long shot, not really a short time thing, but Rajiv and I are discussing on these matters, and we hope that something will emerge out of it.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Girish, for sharing your insights and providing us a broad overview of the entire thing. And thanks so much for your time once again. And viewers, please do watch the video. And if you have any questions, maybe if there's any something very interesting question or some topic, I'll definitely contact you back, sir. Apart from that, yeah, thanks so much for your time and thanks for sharing your insights so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.